Hello guys, welcome to IB 360. Today is the last class on proteins. Previous video I had talked about the four organizations of protein: primary, secondary, tertiary and quaternary. Today we will look through the classification of proteins. So proteins can be classified according to their shape, their function, constitution and quality into various types. So we will go through them today one by one. On the basis of shape, proteins can be classified as fibrous and as globular. So as the names suggest, you can understand fibrous proteins are thread-like, while globular proteins, they have a rounded outline. So that is the basic difference, that they would be thread-like and they would be rounded. Second point is fibrous proteins, they are generally possessing the secondary organization. That means they are either in the form of alpha helix or beta pleated sheets or collagen helix. Globular proteins, on the other hand, their final structure would be either tertiary or quaternary. That would be their final structure. Third point is fibrous proteins, they are non-enzymatic. And globular proteins are, they may be enzymatic or non-enzymatic, but mostly they're enzymatic. So maybe enzymatic or non-enzymatic. Enzymatic means they can act as enzymes. Fourth point, fibrous proteins, they are insoluble in water. Our hair is made of keratin. Keratin of skin and hair is a fibrous protein. So obviously we know that is not soluble in water. And globular proteins, they are mostly soluble in water. Okay. And fibrous proteins, they are usually acting as structural proteins because they are tough. While globular proteins, they are found in the blood, like for example, serum globulins. Okay, so here let us write some examples. Keratin, obviously we have seen, keratin of skin and hair. Also myosin of muscles, elastin of connective tissues. The egg albumin is also a globular protein. Then serum globulins, gamma globulins and other immunogens are found in our blood. All those are globular proteins. In fact, glutenins of rice and wheat also are examples of large globulin proteins. Another aspect of globular proteins is they are not coagulated by heat. They are not coagulated by heat. Okay. Larger globular proteins, they get coagulated by heat, but smaller ones like histones, we know histone proteins, they're used in DNA packing inside the nucleus. So histones, these are smaller globular proteins which can get coagulated by application of heat. So can coagulate by heat, small globular protein. Okay, so this is the difference between fibrous and globular proteins. So proteins can be categorized on the basis of their shape into fibrous and globular proteins, and examples are very important. You should memorize at least these two examples from here. Then comes on the basis of function. So depending upon their function, proteins can be classified into primarily three categories, you can say. One would be enzymatic protein. Wait, let just then there can be structural protoplasmic proteins, then there can be reserve or storage proteins. Okay, so just so on the basis of their function, proteins can be categorized into enzymatic, structural, and reserve or storage proteins. Okay, so if you remember, while I was differentiating globular and fibrous proteins, I mentioned that fibrous proteins are structural in nature, while globular proteins are enzymatic, mostly enzymatic in nature. So here is the other form of classification, that is on the basis of their function. So enzymatic proteins, obviously they can act as enzymes either directly or in conjugation with a non-protein part, which would be called a cofactor. Okay, so this is the difference between, yeah, let us talk about enzymatic proteins. So either they can act as simple enzymes, or they will act as conjugated enzymes. Simple enzymes will have only amino acids, but conjugated enzymes will have other non-amino acid parts, which would be called cofactors, attached to the core protein, attached to the core enzyme. And enzymatic proteins are usually globular in shape because globular proteins are mostly enzymatic. Fibrous proteins are never enzymatic. I mentioned here only. So that is another important point. Then comes the structural proteins. Also they are known as protoplasmic proteins. Now they form part of cellular structures and their products. For example, colloidal complex of protoplasm, then cell membranes, contractile proteins, structural proteins of hairs and nails, and they can be both globular or fibrous in nature. Okay, so structural or protoplasmic proteins. So they can be both fibrous or globular in nature, and they form part of cellular structures and their products. Then reserve or storage proteins. Now they are, as their name suggests, they would be occurring as food reserve, mostly in seeds, eggs or milk. Examples are very important under reserve proteins: albumins, globulins, prolamins, then glutelins. See, glutelins, they would be found in rice or wheat. Okay. Then according to their constitution, actually we have already discussed constitution, if you have noticed, they can be simple or they can be conjugated. Simple means they would be made of only amino acids. Conjugated means some cofactors would be present along with amino acid. And according to the cofactors, or according to the prosthetic groups which are linked with the amino acids, they are named accordingly. There are several types, like nucleoproteins are there. Nucleoproteins would have certain nucleic acids like DNA or RNA, attached to the code enzyme, attached to the only amino acid part. In case of chromoproteins, there would be pigments like flavoproteins. Hemoglobin is a chromoprotein actually, where which is a iron plus heme compound, and found in erythrocyte surface. As we know, it's oxygen transporter found in blood, so that is also a chromoprotein. In case of flavoproteins, we know FMN, which is flavin mononucleotide, is attached to FAD. In case of hemoglobin, the prosthetic groups would be both iron as well as heme. Then in case of hemocyanin, there is copper with heme. In case of hemoglobin, we have iron with heme. In case of hemocyanin, we have copper with heme. Okay, like in metalloproteins, the prosthetic groups are metals. Okay, so metalloproteins, prosthetic groups can be copper or zinc or manganese or iron. Glycoproteins, they would be carbohydrates in glycoproteins. Okay, so this is the classification on the basis of their constitution. Now the last bit, that is classification on the basis of their quality. Now see, another type of proteins are also found, which are known as derived proteins, but they are not in your syllabus. Derived proteins, they are got from proteins through denaturation, coagulation, or breakdown. Okay, like in fibrin, we know fibrinogen. Fibrin is the meshwork which we find in blood coagulation. From inactivated fibrinogen, we get fibrin. So coagulation of fibrinogen results to fibrin. Then proteoses. If we break down proteins, it forms peptones, proteoses. So it is a breakdown product. Okay, so this is the category which is known as derived protein, which we usually classify under constitutional basis only. So just, I hope you have taken all this down. So this is a derived protein, the third part of on the basis of constitution. Okay, now on the basis of quality, proteins can be classified into complete proteins and incomplete proteins. On the basis of quality, they can be classified into complete and incomplete proteins. What are complete and incomplete proteins? See, complete proteins, they are proteins which contain all the essential amino acids required by human beings. So they are proteins which are complete for the human body, which are enough for human body. Okay, and they are known as also first class proteins. Here also we see classism, first class proteins. For example, in milk we find all sorts of essential amino acids required by the human body. Soya also possesses a nearly complete protein. Then egg, meat, fish, all these, milk is a vital example. Egg, soya, fish. So here important examples would be milk and soya. Okay. In case of incomplete protein, they are lacking one or more essential amino acids, and most of the plant proteins are thereby incomplete proteins. Okay, so they lack one or two essential proteins. So vegans, they're usually into soya because they are not able to eat any dairy products, so they can't go for milk, and obviously egg or fish is a no for them, so they opt for soybeans. Lack of one or two essential amino acids. Okay, and these are second class proteins. So they are second class proteins. And plant proteins, they are these. So this is all about proteins and their types. Now one more thing which I want to show you is the difference in structures between fibrous and globular proteins. See, this is thread like and this is rounded in outline. And myoglobin is a very classic example of a globular protein. Collagen, we know collagen helix is a thing where three different polypeptides are forming a helix. In case of alpha helix, we see there is two polypeptides, right? In any helix we see that, but in collagen helix there are three polypeptides involved. So in my previous video I had talked about collagen helix. So I hope you get an idea about the classification of proteins from here. Stay safe. Thanks a lot for watching the video. Hit the like and share button.